All right, welcome everybody to a different kind of video here I'm going to film. As many of you have noticed, I'm in the process of hosting a tournament on our Discord channel, link in the description here if you want to check that out. So I haven't done my regularly scheduled weekly edit voiceovers of the trials and tribulations of me losing to various people online. So what I thought I would do is just film a quick video for some of the newer players on some of the basics to, kind of what to expect, because the folks that play this game online, a lot of us are, I guess fairly used to it or advanced or whatever you want to say. So I know it can be intimidating for new players. I know because I was a new player about a year ago, give or take. I had played online a bunch I had played in person a bunch and then came online with the idea that, I'll be pretty good. I'm not too worried about it. And not only did I have 300 dozen rules slightly incorrect, but also got my butt whooped quite a bit. And the mod itself can be a little bit intimidating too. So I thought maybe what I'd do is give a kind of a brief overview of what to expect when you're on the Discord channel and when you're playing somebody online. This is the Xander mod. You can find it on Steam in the workshops. And this is what it looks like when you load. It automatically loads you as the Imperial player, but you can change your color here in the top right-hand corner, and you can switch to the Rebel side. If you're playing 4 players, there's the 4 different views here. And if you're just viewing, you can either view on the gray spectator, which does not see everybody's cards, or you can view on the black game master spectator, where hidden information is revealed. So this means you'll be able to see the hidden probe deck over here, as well as cards in everybody's hands. All right, so usually you'll join. One of you will pick which side you want. There's no formal way of doing this. Our Discord channel has kind of its own rules, but generally you just pick a side, agree on it, and then you click this Initiate Setup button over here. Okay, then you'll pick whether or not you're doing a 2-person game or a 3 to 4-person game. 3 to 4-person just opens up these other seats here, but we'll select 1v1, and then you'll see this do or do not populate. And then what it's asking you to do is answer the question with a exclamation point, "There is no try." Okay, now if you do that, these objectives will be viewable. If you don't do that in a certain amount of time, then what'll happen is the missions will actually be blacked out, like here. Okay, so that's designed so that you need to own the game of Rebellion, so you would know what your objectives are. But the code for that, when it says do or do not, is exclamation point, "There is no try." Of course, it's a janky Rebel saying there, but we'll just leave that be. Okay, so here we go. We've selected 2-on-2, and then you can choose between the base game or Rise of the Empire, which is what everybody plays online, or a custom setup. We'll go ahead and select Rise of the Empire. Okay, the mod will load. I'll ask you to wait here for a minute while it does some of the objective sorting, shuffling, stacking. And then it will give you an option. You'll see here everything will be done in order. So the Rebels have their first objective over here. You'll see the 2 choices of decks you can pick here, either the rote deck or the base deck. Okay, and to select it, you can see here the instructions. You press exclamation point rote or exclamation point base. Okay, now the reason they have you do that instead of pressing a button is because you can select your deck in secret and reveal at the same time as the other person. This is one of the only things that the Rebels do not do before the Empire does. So I'll type base here, and you can see in the bottom left-hand corner it will say Imperial General has chosen. Okay, now the rebel player, even if he was sandbagging and trying to figure out what I picked, they would not know. They would just know I made a selection. I don't click the button, I don't drag the deck over or anything along that line. So we'll say the rebel player picks the rote deck, type in !rote. You can see I changed to the red color, so now I represent the rebels. And then it'll say rebel general has chosen. Okay, now after the decks are assigned, you can hover over your opponent's deck and you can see what option they picked. So for example, the Imperial player here picked base and the Rebel Scum picked rote. Okay, so now that the loyalties have been assigned, so let's take a look here. We got Mon Cal, got a neutral, Seleucami, Mandalore, Megiddo, Corellia, Seleucid, and then also Rhodia. So after the loyalties are assigned, then you pick whether or not you want the Rise of the Empire units or the base game units. Now, this is ultimately a choice between the two players that you're playing. The convention online is, and funny that this happened, if the Rebel player has a loyal Mon Calamari and the Imperial player does not have a loyal or subjugated Seleucami, then the convention is that you pick the Rise of the Empire unit setup and that the Death Star under construction can be assigned to Dagobah. Why is that? It's because the idea is having a loyal Mon Cal with no ability to subjugate it easily round one without a mission means that if the Empire does not get to subjugate Utapau, then the Rebel player has an easy path to 2 Mon Calamaris because there's no Imperial location that will be next to Utapau, which will make it subjugatable with a standard setup. You would need a mission to do it. So sometimes if you have a loyal Mon Calamari and can get a loyal Utapau, and the Imperial player doesn't draw any good missions, the game can be over very quickly because you can get 2 or 3 Mon Cals on the queue in the very first turn. So in this instance, we would play Rise of the Empire units. Now, why might you ask, is that the only time we can play Rise of the Empire units? No, that's not the case. If you do select Rise of the Empire units with a loyal Seleucami, then the rule is the Death Star under construction cannot be placed in Dagobah. It must be placed in Tatooine or one of these other remote areas here. The reason is because then if you subjugate Mon Cal, then Utapau becomes not easy to subjugate. So the Rebel player can still get a Nebulon and a Mon Cal. So for here, let's just go ahead and do base game units, since that will be the selection that you'll play most often, and we'll keep with this lopsided. Setup here for the moment. Okay. So let's talk about setting up units. So we've selected our units, and now you can see both the Rebel and Imperial player have units available here, in accordance to the setup that you picked, either base game or rote. Okay. One thing that's different from the usual game is you'll see these neutral markers. Okay, we don't have neutral markers on the board normally. It just looks like a blank setup here. You'll also see there are these sabotage markers that have blockades on the back side of them. Okay, we'll talk about those here in a minute. That's one of the differences on the game. You'll also see this probe map here for the Empire. Now the Rebel player, if I switch to Rebel colors here, the Rebel player cannot see the probe map here. They can't see a hand moving around here. They can't see what general direction the hand is moving. They can't see anything. So the Imperial player has the ability, we'll select Empire here for a minute. Oftentimes what people will do is they'll place the probe card on the location that is the starting areas, whether or not it's subjugated or loyal. Now what I like to do is I actually like to place damage markers over here on the side on my starting locations, because not only are these areas I technically have the probes for, but they're also locations that cannot be received by or cannot be drawn with plant false leads. So they're a little bit different than the regular cards in the sense that they're, the rebel base can never be at these locations. So I like to have something to differentiate that. Some people use sideways probe cards to do that. You can do whatever you like. I like to use damage tokens. Interestingly enough, you can also go up here to the pen, the draw section on here with different shapes and different colors, and you can make notes. So for example, if I thought that the rebel base might be, a good place to start might be in Ryloth, and I want to make sure to check that out, I can draw circles, or I can make lines or little notes that I want to on this probe map. And again, the rebel player, switching colors here, cannot see any of these notes or any of these lines. So I will do that on occasion. So think of this probe map as kind of like your private notepad. Now, if you want to erase these lines, you can either select the eraser here, or you can just click Erase All Drawn Lines, and that will erase any notes you've taken. Okay, let's talk about some of the mouse controls for units and whatnot. So you can deploy units by just clicking and dragging and moving them to your locations, or you can highlight, or you can click and hold and drag and select a number of units, and you can shift the way that they're oriented by pressing the numbers in accordance to the number of rows that you'd like to have. So for example, if I want to pick up all these units and I want them all in one row, press the number 1. If 2 is okay, I can press 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever. One thing you'll notice is the spacing is usually based on the largest unit. So sometimes I'll like to pick up, all the stormtroopers and then the AT-AT and straighten them out, or things along that lines, all my TIE fighters, and put them in a little square or a little line. So that's one way to control your units. Or you can always just click and drag one at a time. If you can hear the mouse clicks in the background, I apologize for that. Okay, so let's say we've deployed our units. Empire's decided to kind of spread around the galaxy here. Rebels are going to go into Utapau. Okay, so we'll do that. And then everything's set. Rebels decide to put the rest of their units in the base. Now, one thing that people will do here on the Rebel side to sort of organize things a little bit is oftentimes they'll put the ground units in the base space, and then they'll put the space units kind of laid up right next to here to kind of help separate and keep things organized. There's not a lot of space on the Rebel queue, so if you put your spaceships out to the side, that's a pretty normal convention to do. Again, you can arrange them with the 1, 2, 3, or 4 lines. We'll just put them in a square here. Okay, so now all our units are deployed, and then what you'll see is you'll see your starting action cards come out here. Okay, the Rebels will have theirs. I'll switch to black so that we can see everything. The Rebels will have theirs, the Empire will have theirs. Anybody plays their immediates as needed. This Rebel has C-3PO as a starting card. Okay, the droids are all based in, most things you'll need are based in either these boxes here on the left-hand side or these boxes in the bottom right over here. Okay, so what are in these boxes? To view what's in the boxes, you can either click and hold and drag items out like this and just pull droids out, or rings in this case. Or you can right-click on the box and then hit search. Okay, if you hit search, it'll pull up your droids in here. If you wanted to look for C-3PO, but you didn't want to mouse over, you could just type the letter C, and then it will take anything that does not have a C out. So the Millennium Falcon has a C in it, and C-3PO has a C-3PO. There we go. Has a C and a 3 in there, so I'll type that. Bring out C-3PO. Okay. Now, if we wanted to attach this to somebody, let's say Mothma, which is the usual suspect. If you drag Mothma on top, it's kind of a pain to always highlight and move these two items around. So what the mod does is you can right-click on the leader and you can hit Attach Ring. Okay, so right-click on the leader, Attach Ring, it attaches the droid to Mon Mothma. Now you can throw her around at your whim and the droid will stay attached. Okay. This also works with the Imperial rings, such as Bounty over here, or Capture, or Carbonite. or lure, all loaded in the Imperial box closer to the Imperial side. Okay, the sabotage markers that I mentioned here earlier, if you flip it with the F button, you will see they have a blockade feature too. Now, if you cover up these icons either with sabotage or blockade, what it will do is it will prevent, the system will recognize that this is not a buildable spot for the unit. So, for example, if Mon Cal is either blockaded or sabotaged, when you get to the build section and it says who's eligible to build what, having one of these on top will prevent the Mon Cal from being built. So you can see here in the bottom left, we're fast forwarding a little bit, when we get to the build queue, it'll say Rebels can build a Mon Cal and an X-Wing. If I cover this up and press that again, Rebels cannot build a Mon Cal or an X-Wing. Now the one broken section on this is Utapau, which does not have a like a snap feature, but it still works. So for example, here we are with a Rebel loyal Utapau. Report current build. You can build 2 Mon Cals and a Corvette because we have both Mon Cal and Utapau. If I just loosely cover this with a blockade or a sabotage and then do the same thing, it strips it down to 1 Mon Cal and an X-Wing. Same if it's over here with blockade. So you don't need to manually keep track of this, even though it doesn't quite snap into place as nicely as some of the other units do. Okay, so that's blockade. Again, this is not in the actual board game, but the sabotage is. Then you'll also have destroyed system markers over here for those of us Imperials that like to liberate citizens of a planet from their lives. So what you can do is you can pull out a destroyed system icon if the Death Star has lasered something. You can cover up a planet completely like this, and then if you like, you can right-click and then go down to toggle and then select lock. That will lock this into place so it can't be moved. Okay, Dantooine is now forever destroyed. If you destroy a space that has a loyalty marker on it, what I recommend doing is just taking the loyalty marker and just putting it off to the side. That allows this to attach nicely, and then it doesn't lock sideways, and it's easy to put troops on and everything. If you do leave the loyalty marker on there, that's fine. The problem is if you cover it up, then it kind of wobbles around funny if something's put on there or doesn't quite lock into place. So when you destroy a system, remove the loyalty marker, lock the system down, and you can say thank you to all the people that have moved on to better existences there. Okay. What else do we have? So we've now assigned our starting cards. So we've gone through that place. The Rebels will select a base. The probe deck is down here, usually right-clicking on the probe deck and then selecting the search button down here will allow you to pick any planet you want. We'll pick let's pick Hoth. So you can drag the card out directly from this deck, and the Imperial player cannot see anything right now. So you don't have to flip the card over in first or anything like that. You can just pull it out and plop it anywhere on the board. Because we're the black color, we can see, remember, hidden information is revealed, so we know this is Hoth. But if I was the Imperial right now, it would look just like a probe, so I won't know what it is. So the Rebel player can then drop it over here in the base space, and it snaps into place nicely over here. So just kind of drop it anywhere around. It'll click into place, and it's got a nice little home to live on there. You can put things on top of it. It's not going to flip the card over accidentally. But beware, if you press the F button to flip a card, it will flip it over. So it's not locked in there permanently. Now you could lock it if you were worried about your opponent doing that with a right click and then locking it down, and then it will not flip in place. But usually that's not a major concern here. Okay. You'll notice to the left here are all the tokens that you need for Rise of the Empire: Rebel Cell, Raid Outpost, Secure the Plan, Show No Fear. Okay, so after the Rebels have hidden their base, you click the Hidden Base Established, and it will automatically deal out your cards. Now, it's important to note that after decks are selected, everything shuffles automatically, so you don't need to shuffle anything. But if you do feel the need to, the R button or right-click Shuffle. And when you right-click, it'll actually tell you what the hotkeys are to do things. So here you can see Shuffle is R. So we'll go ahead and press the Shuffle button or the R button, and it will shuffle the deck as many times as you press the R button. Okay, so everything's been assigned. We have our missions here. I always remind people it's a good idea, because the two missions always deal to the right-hand side of the player playing it. It is a good idea to always shuffle your cards after they're drawn. So right-click, drag, select all, and press the R button. It will shuffle everything. Otherwise, if I'm the Imperial player and the Rebel does not shuffle and they pull out a card from this side of their deck, I know that they're not picking base units to start out here. So again, I don't think anybody intentionally tries to cheat, but well, maybe they do. But if you just take the extra effort of shuffling, or if you're playing with somebody who's new, don't take advantage of them that way. Just point out that they need to shuffle their cards, so that way you don't know. Okay, so that's what we have there for kind of unit control. The F button to flip things, and then let's talk about loyalty over here. These loyalty tokens have a status, Rebel, Neutral, or Imperial, and the way you can change them quickly is by pressing the 1, 2, or 3 button, and then it will change to whatever the neutral is. You can also right-click, you can hover over State, and then you can select Rebel Loyal or Imperial Loyal if you want, but that's a little cumbersome for what it is. So just 1, 2, 3. And then to change between subjugated and neutral, you just press the F button for, I've put a Stormtrooper on here to subjugate Kashyyyk, and is now subjugated. Interestingly enough, if you have a Rebel Loyal here and you subjugate it with a Stormtrooper and you flip it, you will notice the state is Rebel Loyal with Imperial subjugation on top of it. That looks different than a neutral subjugated section, which looks different from Imperial Loyal, right? Whether or not you have a troop on there or not. This is actually a rule I see people get confused sometimes, is that, you know, you can have a Rebel Loyal but subjugated area. This is a nice token that I wish the board game had, in addition to the blockade token as well. I think those are both pretty super useful here. Okay, so now let's talk. We're going to skip combat for a minute, and we're going to go to the little control button we have here. So the buttons you will typically use are in the refresh phase steps here. So you're going to have so let's say we went ahead and we played some missions here. We have some leaders out into some various locations. Yep, got Palps over here. Mothma did something. Dodonna, Leia, have some other guys here. And let's do a rapid too. Okay, so we've now, actually let's not do a rapid. Okay, so we have some things out here. So in the mission order, what you can do at the end during the refresh phases, you can just work left to right. Okay, now you can clear missions, and what this will do is take your eligible starting missions and put them back in your hand, and it will take non-starting missions and put them in the discard pile over here. Okay, you can always search the discard pile just by dragging and dropping, or right-click and press the search button. It will tell you what's there. So clear missions clears this area. One important thing, if you have an interdictor card out here that you had 2 leaders on, and that card goes back into your hand, the game doesn't know how many leaders you played on interdictor. So if you have an interdictor card showing, or a card that needs to go back to your hand that is revealed, when you clear it, it will always go to the discard pile, the project discard pile over here. So good habit is just to pull it back into your hand if that's the case. Now, if you have an unplayed mission here that you did not play, you know, say interdictors here and we just passed or whatever it is, when you clear your missions, it will actually, if it's face down, it will actually go back into your hand, so you don't need to keep track of that. Okay, so clear missions, recall leaders to their pool. That will pull all the leaders back. Okay, so sometimes I'll even click this button after I draft my new hero, which we'll talk about here in a minute. Then we've got draw 2 missions and 2 probes. Okay. You'll notice up here we also have the ability to draw a probe, a mission, or a project, like a one-off. This is something you can use, but during the refresh phase, you'll actually use this button down here. So 2 missions and 2 probes. Your missions will pull up on the right-hand side. Your probes will pull up from the probe deck. And again here, the probe box in Coruscant has unlimited probes. So you can just drag your probes to the appropriate place to cover up the area. If you have a troop that has explored a planet like Kashyyyk over here, and you don't have the probe card and you want to indicate that it's being covered or it's been subjugated or you've checked that area, the backside of the probe card, again with the F button, is what we typically use for that. Sometimes if I decide to move that stormtrooper somewhere else later, make this area unsubjugated, to now subjugate Malastare. If you want to indicate that Kashyyyk has been checked but is not currently covered, sometimes I'll turn that to its side. And now is a good time to talk about the rotate buttons, which are Q and E by default, I believe. So you can press the Q button or the E button to rotate things. That happens with tokens, with Star Destroyers, with probe decks, whatever you want to do. You just rotate stuff around. Okay. So that's 2 missions and 2 probes there. If the Rebel has rapid mobilization out, you will not be able to draw your cards because it will tell you the Rebel still needs to resolve rapid mobilization. Please wait. Okay. What that means is they need to decide whether or not they're putting units back to the base or if they're going to look at 4 cards from the probe deck. And once they look at their 4 cards from the probe deck and decide they don't want to move the base, they can put them back at the bottom of the deck, resolve their missions, which is clear mission area. And now at that point, I can draw my 2 probes and my 2 cards here. Okay, let's talk about draw possible recruits. When you press that button, it'll pull 2 recruits off your action deck here. And it'll give you 2 options, Ambitions of Power or Lord Vader's Orders here. Let's say we wanted Jabba the Hutt. You can just click this card with a left click and it will go directly to your hand and put the other one at the bottom of the deck. If you do something where you drag it out and manually put it into your hand, it can kind of break the buttons and the logic that's put here. So make sure you're using this to click. And then to find your leader, they're in this box directly to the right of the leaders. Right click search and Jabba the Hutt. Or you can just pull them out in whatever order they're in. Admiral Mahdi is always the first one, so you can just pull them out. That's where the leaders live. And then if you pull Jabba up and you want him to line up nicely in your queue, you can just hit recall leaders again, and he goes nice backly in there. Okay, and then lastly, report build queue. Okay, so you click this, and this will tell you what both sides are able to build based on the revealed, the loyal, the subjugated, the blockaded. It takes all that into consideration. We'll tell you what to build, and you can just grab the units out of these boxes here, which have the correct number of units based on the game that you're playing. So if you need to pull out 6 stormtroopers, oftentimes what I'll do is I'll just grab 1 stormtrooper out of the box first, and then I'll keep hovering over it, and I'll press the right-click button, which pulls out multiples out of the box until you stop pressing the right-click button. Okay. If I ever pull out too many things and I want to put them back, the easiest way to do that, you can either drop them directly into the box while you're holding them all, or if you have a bunch of different types of things that have all gotten destroyed thanks to a rebel outburst, and you don't want to sort them into the box individually, you can just put them on this casualty section up here and press clear casualties. Okay. Let's talk about combat here. Same rule with combat as your regular cards. You want to highlight them all and then shuffle them. Okay, why do you want to do that? Well, because I know that support of the 501st is always the right-hand card of the Empire. So if I'm doing a, incite rebellion, and I know the Imperial player hasn't shuffled their card, and they pull 501st out of here, or a face-down card off this side of their deck, I know they're playing the 501st. So I can gauge my hand by that. So just general rule of thumb, and again, if you're a seasoned player, just remind new players to shuffle the deck. That is definitely worth it. Highlight them all with R, or highlight them all and then press R. Okay, so now we've got our combat going on here. We've got cards that we're playing. After everybody plays their cards, you can put them in the discard pile over here, which is ground discard and space discard. If the battle goes on long enough, people are dying, and we cycle through the deck and the cards need to be returned to your hand. You can press reset ground tactic or reset space tactic, and that will pull your cards back into your hand if I haven't broken whatever's already going on here. So reset ground tactic, reset space tactic. Yep, there we go. Definitely broke something with the Empire, but yeah, there we go. Okay, combat rolling. So rolling dice is this plus or minus button on here. You can only add the maximum number of dice. You can't go over that. Nothing calculates your dice automatically. So you'll go ahead and add whatever dice you want to roll, determine who's going to roll first, roll your dice, and then your re-rolls are based on the leader that you have fighting for you. So leaders we generally plop on these little icons here. So if Riken rolled 2 red hits and a black hit and a heal, he heals this guy. He wants to try to take out this AT-AT, so he needs 1 more red hit. He's going to choose to re-roll 1 red and 1 green and hit the re-roll dice button and miss. Okay, so now we have to assign damage. So we've done 1 black damage and 2 red damage. So usually I'll grab damage markers out of here. Again, pull 1 out and then right-click your others that you need and straighten them out with the number 1. Then decide who you're going to assign the damage to. Some people like to right-click on this damage icon and hit clone, or copy, and then do a paste later. But if you clone it and you just left-click it, you can drop damage on things like crazy in accordance to the number of dice you roll. Okay. So that's a different way of doing it. I like the tactile feel of pulling them out of the box. Now, if you have a bunch of junk on the ground and you want to group them together, you just highlight them all, press the G button, that'll group them together. Then you can drop things you don't need in the casualty area and press clear casualties. It will go back to the damage marker, which is unlimited. There are some extra dice here for whatever reasons, but I don't know. Oftentimes I just right-click and delete those. Doesn't really matter too much. And that is how combat works here. So general rules for tabletop on Discord. Some people like to do voice chat. I have mine set up. If you have voice chat set up, I would recommend keying it to a button. Mine is keyed to the letter C. So if I'm talking to somebody, the microphone comes up. If you don't key it to a button and say you're eating chips or something like that, then your opponent is listening to you eating chips, which I guess is kind of like a real life experience, but I'll hard pass on that one. And that's kind of it. That's kind of the basics. So we'll talk about Discord maybe another time, but this gives you a general idea of how to play Star Wars Rebellion Rise of the Empire on Tabletop Simulator. Hope you enjoyed it, and go Empire. See you guys soon. Bye.